Thank you for being here. On Monday, we will be celebrating the 59th anniversary of our independence. President Ali will be speaking on Sunday at Albion in Region 6, consistent with the government's policy to move these celebrations across our country. And I hope that the people in Berbice and those from other parts of our country will listen to his address, and those who can hopefully will attend the celebrations. Every independence celebration is an important milestone in our country's relatively short independent history. And it allows us an opportunity to speak to the people of our country, not about only about past challenges, but also about where our country is headed. And I'm sure that President Ali shall address that issue about where our country is going. And we believe that it's important to paint that picture for the people of the country, to lay out the vision for the future, to support that vision by well laid out plans and programs, because the citizens of the country deserve that type of information as they plan their lives and their future. And we're very proud in the PPP that we've been one of the only parties that have been able to consistently lay out that sort of vision, a positive vision for the future. A vision that is not based on just criticism of others, inane criticism of others, but that is focused on the needs of the people of this country. And so, as we approach these independence celebrations, you're going to hear about our vision to support a massive economic expansion in the future. But not just economic expansion, broad-based economic expansion that will then yield the benefits that would allow us to support the development needs of our people. We have done so often, and it is worth repeating that vision for economic development, because economic development provides the resources for all other developments in the country. And we're the only party, again, that has laid out detailed plans for economic development, whether it is in mining or agriculture or the hospitality sector, or generally in the expansion of all of the other industries. You're going to hear about our plans for the near term about creating a world-class education and healthcare for the people of this country, for our children, but also for the adults. You will hear about our plans for the creation of a program that would ultimately result in every Guyanese who is of a certain age owning a home of their own. You're going to hear about our plans for the expansion of benefits and welfare to the children of the country, to the elderly and disabled, not just in the president's speech, but in a lot of the other speeches that you will hear from ministers as they go around the country to support the regional independence celebration activities. You'd hear about the rollout of a digital society, the components of which are already being worked on, and how these will improve the lives of our citizens. You would hear about the financial empowerment of our people and expanded economic opportunities for them. You'll hear about the expansion of investment in security, because safety and security are vital for the future. Job creation, wealth creation, closing the divide between the hinterland and the coast, something that we spoke of a lot at the Two Shows meeting this week, would be all part of that vision for the future. And of course, the most important thing of all, bringing our people together across race, across religion, across gender, working for all the people of our country. These are important things that we will talk about because they matter to the people of this country. And it's important that on the occasion of the independence of Guyana, we show how we are managing our own country, because we've seen a lot of independent countries, or countries that have gained independence, the tumultuous, difficult route that they've had to go through. And many have decumulated wealth and lost welfare as part of their independent management of the countries. Here too in Guyana, we are no stranger to that sort of history. You would recall that of the 59 years, maybe 34 years, we had APNU in control of the parliament or the executive. 26 plus 5, and then another 3 years when they controlled the parliament from 2015 to 2020, where very little could have been done. And we experienced the same thing. In the post-independence period, what did we have? We saw our country become an international pariah because of undemocratic rigged elections. Guyana was characterized for massive economic decline and a large exodus of its people in that era, looking for welfare across the world, or jobs across the world. We had a destruction of all the independent institutions that keep a society free, including no free media. There was only state media in that period. The state banned newsprint for the independent media, like some of the newspapers, etc. There were 2 newspapers. They had to smuggle their newspaper in to print, like Mirror or some of the others, like Catholic Standard at that time, to even print, to get news out. Of course, the state controlled the entire radio. There was no independent judiciary. The party, the PNC's flag flew over the High Court ahead of the national flag. That was a significant part of our independent history. So we became undemocratic. Large numbers of our people left. We lost welfare. 87% of our people became poor, and no economic growth and development. And so we have spent a significant period in our tenure in office changing that trajectory and rebuilding the country. And I'm proud to say that we are no longer an international pariah on elections. We nearly became that in 2020 again, with their attempt to steal elections, but we no longer international pariah. We're now seen as one of the most dynamic economies in the world. We have the fastest growing economy. We're expanding welfare massively compared to other countries. We're tackling rollout of new infrastructure, new sectors in the economy. We have an abundance of jobs now for our people, unlike many countries that can't find jobs for many people. So we have come a long way from the period when we had a very different experience. And it's important that people remember that history and say and commit themselves basically to ensuring that we never go down that route again, because we become populist in our orientation, like pursue unsustainable economic plans. It's a significant part of that era was characterized by that, and that we defend our freedoms. So I just want to, in advance, wish all of our people a happy independence anniversary, and I hope that they use the opportunity for introspection. It's not just cliched, because often people talk about it in a cliched manner, but just to really dig into the substance of how far we have come and the difficult path that we walk to in these short years, or relatively short years, as a newly independent country. I would also like to say a few words about the Venezuela's fraudulent attempt to hold elections in their territory, but have announced that it is for the Essequibo region. Now we know that Maduro signaled that he would hold these elections after the passage of the rigged referendum in Venezuela, in which you had a low turnout, and I think they rigged the numbers as they did with the recently held elections. Thereafter, we approach the ICJ, and the ICJ in December of 2023 issued provisional orders saying that Venezuela must not do anything to disrupt the status quo. Nevertheless, Venezuela has defied the ICJ defied the entire international community because there was condemnation of this attempt or the intent, this express intent to hold these elections, and they're proceeding with the elections. We then approached the ICJ again, and the ICJ issued new provisional orders reaffirming the earlier one that no action should be taken on the part of Venezuela to disturb what exists today, which is that we control the entire 83,000 square miles of the sovereign state of Guyana. Venezuela will go ahead with it because this is Maduro's way of deflecting from all of his concerns that at home, raised by people at home. And there are many concerns. There's economic decline, there are global sanctions against the country, they rigged the elections massively, he's locking up his opponents in Venezuela, and so he often uses the border issues to deflect attention from those matters. Now, we have made it clear as to what our position is. We have the support of the ICJ, we have the support of the entire international community. The United States ambassador just recently spoke at the Private Sector Commission elections, and she reiterated that support, strong support, for which we're extremely grateful. And we as a nation need to stand together against this fraudulent regime and their fraudulent elections in the Essequibo region, or that they purport to be for the Essequibo region. Now, tomorrow, the Parliament will debate a solidarity motion on this issue, and I expect that, in keeping with our tradition, that would receive the unanimous support. And we expect this to be mirrored across our country. And people, regardless of their politics or their religion or race in Guyana, have always supported the maintenance of the territorial integrity of this country. The Chief of Staff has made it clear, and I wish to endorse his decision, that should there be any attempt by any Venezuelan who is living here to purport to vote in those elections, they will be rounded up and deported immediately, sent out of our country. And if there are Guyanese who engage in that treasonous act, they too will face consequences. We made it clear, because it will be a treasonous act. And I want to urge these political commentators, from some of them from the opposition, to stop spreading Venezuelan fake news and propaganda. Some of them unconscionably over the past few days. I don't know if they think this will harm the PPP. They keep spreading the Venezuelan propaganda. Some of them have even repeated the lie that I offered Venezuela some access into the sea, which is a lie. So, again, on Saturday, President Ali will have a patriotic concert. He will be at a patriotic concert in Essequibo, and I hope that all of the people attend or tune in to the patriotic concert. There's this fraudulent regime in Venezuela must see all of Guyana speaking with one voice on this matter. Even in the toughest days of the dictatorship, when we had undemocratic elections and the regime was repressive, the People's Progressive Party coined a term called critical support. We will keep criticizing you on your policies because we did not support your economic policies and otherwise, but we will give full support on border-related matters or where it concerns the territorial integrity of our country. So I hope that we'll experience this. And all of the stupid people who are making statements, and there are some stupid people in this country, and I'll address that later, that Venezuela own parts, they own the Essequibo, if they too must face consequences. You have a few of them who are deranged, only a deranged person. If they're so, a couple of them so love Venezuela, go and live there. You don't need to live in our country. The third thing I want to deal with today is a bit on the NTC. So over the past 3 days or so, the two shows have been in Georgetown, engaged in a series of discussions about development in their communities. And we're extremely pleased that this conference has grown in prestige, in substance, in depth, and in size over the many years since it started. And it bears, I think I need to repeat something that I said earlier this week, that this engagement with two shows did not exist all the time. It started in an ad hoc basis, on an ad hoc basis, with Chedi Jagan in 1995. And it continued, the engagement continued every year throughout my presidency, meeting with the two shows. And then in 2006, we passed the Amerindian Act, and the NTC was legislatively enshrined, or the NTC was enshrined as part of the act, in the act. So, and the engagements have continued. So, what is taking place now, this year, is not new. And it's not because it's election year. I've seen some frenzied activities on the part of the opposition because it's election year now, that they suddenly are issuing statements about what plans they have for indigenous peoples and who is attending and who is not attending and who was excluded and who is not excluded, etc. Their only interest in engaging two shows now is because it's election year. PPP governments have engaged these two shows every single year. And we have addressed similar concerns from the two show in a similar manner every single year, where almost the entire cabinet spends the week there engaging Tushos on various issues. So, for example, today, just left a meeting there earlier where Bishop Edgehill is talking about public works and the Minister of Education with the Tushos, where they get to directly raise issues concerning public infrastructure and education with the ministers and their technical staff. Under APNU, it was the 5 years under APNU was very different. I recall because the majority of the Tushos were complaining about it. They had no engagement whatsoever from the leadership. I think President Granger made a speech and exited, and that's the end of the matter. He exited it there. President Ali has been every single day at the convention center talking to people. And this is not this year alone. He did it last year and the year before too. It's not because it is election year. We've done this consistently, not conveniently. They're very convenient about these things because it's election year. And they believe that people, the Tushos, would not recognize this fake love that they suddenly acquired in the past few months for indigenous people and indigenous issues. People will see through it. They have absolutely no concern for the communities. So, predictably, the Starbuck News, again, consistent with what I said before, have now, they had an editorial that talks about the Amerindian Act. Again, not about the great things that are happening within these communities. And then the next one, a story, government officials get more speaking time at NTC over Tushos, AFC. And the reason we're there is accountability. The Tushos raise issues so that they get them addressed right here at the meeting, and they appreciate that. So that's their criticism. And, well, I'm not going to deal with the minor ones here this week. I'm just not in a mood to deal with their nitpicking, like some of them are nitpickers. So the key issues are about accountability. Starbuck News mentioned accountability. And political parties have to be accountable to. Accountable for performance. So let us explore the accountability that we had in our 5 years term in office. And that's what I did a lot in my speech. I explored accountability for our 5 years. That's when you understand genuineness and trustworthiness. When a politician can come and say, you elected us in 2015, and by 2020, this is what we did, and this is what we promised. But they would not account for their tenure. We can easily go to the indigenous people like we've been doing along the coast in every community. When I go to Berbice, I'll say to people, you know, in Berbice now, we have about 11,000 people more through government-owned programs, either through the part-time jobs or Gaisuko or the housing program, who are employed now than were employed in 2020. And through the private sector, you have maybe another 10,000 people in Region 6 alone. So just imagine you have 20,000 people in one region who didn't have a job in the past. That's accountability. We go and say, we fix almost all the roads in every community. That's accountability for the 5 years in government. We're building out X facilities, housing programs at Palmyra, that's accountability because we're keeping our promise to expand housing. So we've done it across the country. When we're on the Essequibo Coast, we say the same thing. So too with the indigenous communities, we use this opportunity to be accountable for the 5 years because this is the 5-year term. And we didn't make excuses about COVID, etc. And then I pointed out, look at the things that have been done in the 5 years. For example, one, so this whole question of oil money, that are we flush with oil money? Because APNU goes to like they did along the coast, told people, oh, it's because of oil money that they are doing certain things. We didn't have oil money. Well, they increased the taxes by $94 billion per year. And the first year, we reduced those taxes by $40 billion, consistent with our commitment. First year. But I pointed out to the two shows the same thing that I've been pointed out to people who live along the coast, that the oil money, all the oil money in this year's budget is only 37% of the budget. That means it can only fund 37% of the expenditure. And that if you add our allocations to education, health, roads and bridges, it's more than all the oil money in the budget, leaving out everything else. To pay wages and salaries in the public sector, which is 200-odd billion and grew by 100 billion since we got into office, that's excluded. Or what we're doing in agriculture or security. Only 3 areas account for all the oil money: education, health, roads and bridges. Add the 3 and you will see they're more than all the oil money in the budget that came in. So it's not as though we're flush with oil money. That's the first point. Then I pointed out again APNU's philosophy that Amerindians must not get any oil benefit if they want more land. Now, since we got into office, we reverse their policy of stopping, by which they did, where they dismantled Amerindian land titling unit and stopped land titling. We've demarcated 15 villages so far, and 10 have received their certificates of title in the 5 years, and 5 we're working through lands and survey. So we don't hold the same philosophy that Amerindians, if they get more land, they must not benefit from oil resources. That's a big difference here. And then the third thing is that between 2015 and 2020, the APNU government spent on capital in regions 1, 7, 8, and 9, the capital budget, what is the capital budget? In which sectors? Education, health, agriculture, and administration. These are the 4 heads. So all the capital budget for these areas. If you total up all of the capital budgets for the 5 years in these 4 regions, it comes up to $5.8 billion in 5 years. The cash grant alone, the 100,000 cash grant, was 60,500 people in these 4 regions received it. They're over 18 years old. That means they got $6.5 billion on the cash grant alone, more than what they spent on capital works for education, health, agriculture, and administration in 5 years, under APNU. That's the magnitude of the difference. We spend on capital now, we spend in a single year more than what we have spent they have spent in the 5 years in some of the regions. And so let's take 4 secondary schools we're building now. The 4 secondary schools, when combined, just 4 secondary schools in the hinterland, including Quebana, Hosororo, Carasabai, etc. They're more than the capital budgets for these 5 years, for all the sectors, 4 schools alone that are being built. So that's the scale of what we are doing in these areas. Leaving out, like, roads in the communities, like the road in Mabruma settlement and going up to Hosororo or the Moruca area and other places. I'm not going to get into too much about this. So that's accountability, and it shows the magnitude. We're spending $1.5 billion on housing. We have 30,000 solar panels. And look at the experience of the solar panels. You remember when APNU came in? We have bought solar panels for these hubs, and they did not give it to the community. They kept it in Georgetown. The computers we bought for the Amerindian communities for the hubs, they kept them in Georgetown, never gave them. We've now operationalized 140 of these hubs where they have a large solar unit, 20 computers, they have high-speed internet. We have now over 600 places in the hinterland with high-speed internet. Under APNU, they had a corrupt arrangement through NDMA to put these facilities in a couple of villages, utilizing the funds that we left under the first LCDS, 17.2 million US, but made a mess of it. That's what's happening there. I can go down the long list of issues under the Amerindian development. We spent about $32 billion from the Amerindian Ministry alone, leaving out health and education, through the Amerindian Development Fund, the presidential grant, support to youth activities, women's development in these areas. That leaves out all of the roads, etc., that we've done in the area. The Hinterland Scholarship alone was like $400 and something million. So I can talk a lot about those things. That's the accountability part. And you hear it from the two shows. The two shows, I've seen some interviews they've done. They all speak positively about it. Never would for one day the Stabroek News or the others, the AFC, etc., say they just find some negative. And I see Raghubir was there looking for negatives, but she didn't even get accredited. I don't know where she's a journalist, where she publishes. She publishes in a newspaper. Only the residents of Mars read that newspaper. They have it, and she telegraphs it to Mars. What kind of journalist is that? Yeah, anti-PPP officials hanging around for some negatives around the conference all the time. That is what they do, vulture-like activities. So so let's just go to one initiative that they've been trying to kill. One initiative that would not have been in place had it not been for this PPP civic government and its creativity, and that's the LCDS. And so in 3 years, these communities have gotten $222.7 million US, or $4.7 billion in the first year, $23.27 million US dollars, or $4.8 billion in the second year, and this year $22.7 million, which is 4.73 or nearly 4.8 billion again. So when you combine these 3 years, the Amerindian communities have benefited from over $14 billion that they're doing. Literally, they were going to be doing about nearly 4,000 projects in their communities from utilizing these funds. And they're very creative because they have full control of the funds. Some are using it to support housing development, well, assisting people with their houses. Some have bought black tanks. We are buying black tanks for water security. Some are using it for economic projects. A whole range of creative things are happening with the use of these resources in the communities. And still, the APA that loves the indigenous people wants them to kill this initiative. APA, APNU, and AFC want to kill the initiative by claiming we're not consulting with the leaders, we're not following FPIC. I don't know with whom they're consulting, but they're trying to kill this initiative that came out of the creativity of the PPP regime. These funds would not have been garnered or being utilized for indigenous communities had the PNC been in office, because they squandered the opportunity. They even killed the earlier program that we've had in the 5 years of the Dodo government that they practiced. So people know this. People know this. And even the two shows that are part of, or some of them are part of the APA executive, they understand that this is so. And so my argument is that we will, when I spoke, also as General Secretary of the party, we will make the case to the people of these villages. And we have a strong case to make about the 5 years of that we've been in office, and we're going to account for our tenure. We're not going to go there and say, oh, we will do something again, new promises. We have made promises, we kept these promises. And we did well even from opposition in these communities. And we expect we'll do even better now. And you just say to the 5,000 people who have a job in these communities now, who didn't have a job in 2020, through the part-time program or the CSO, you say that to them, and it's not a big job, it's a stipend. But they earn about $2 billion per year that they would have not earned otherwise if an APNU was in office. And on the economic projects, you remember they had some economic projects under the Sled Farmer Indian community. Guess how they used to do it? So the Figueroas got a bit of money to do pig pens. Christopher Jones got money for the barber shop. Then the Tushao from Vincent Henry got $100 and something million, over $160 million to distribute to the Amerindian communities. He got it alone. That is how they did it. We didn't do that. We continue to do the SLED projects, but you have had in region 9, about 4,000 persons who benefit from the slim SLED program instead of one man, Vincent Henry, the PNC MP. So they were spending the money, but they were just spending the money on themselves. That's what they have to contend with when they go into these areas. And anyhow, let me don't think. So I saw Mosley said, indigenous people have a right to their political choice. Politicians must not dictate, says NTC chair Mosley. Of course, we expect that the APA will not dictate to people how to vote because they're linked to the PNC, and they're hoping Laura George resigned from the APA and went to the AFC now and spreading a lot of nonsense again. So they're not going to be able to tell the people. What are they going to tell them? What are they going to tell them? But what we don't need, people understand instinctively what has happened. What has happened in these 5 years. So I'm looking forward to the campaign. I'm going to deal with a few things. So, last week when I spoke, I said some of our people are stupid if they believe Odessa Primus's story that has been peddled or been peddled by some. That she woke up early one morning, packed her bags, booked a plane ticket, flew to New York and said to the immigration, I don't want to enter your country. I've come up here to cancel my visa. Please cancel it so I can go back on the next flight home, which is what they were saying at that time, and that it had nothing to do with her links with the Mohammeds. So I said, some people, Guyanese, have to be stupid to believe that story. So apparently they clipped the little piece out of the story and said, I said, Guyanese are stupid people. And then an editorial, that's the Team Mohammed, fake news. And then an editorial in Kaichor News repeated it. And then the PNC got Annette Ferguson to write a letter to say it. And then they Mark France, who is a nitpicking nuisance, also mentioned this. So it became a story, all fake. So today, I didn't want to really address this, but I want to double down on my comments that you got to be really stupid if you believe that Primus's story, the fiction, the fable. And you got to be really stupid to smuggle a vehicle in the country and then provide evidence of the crime on a Facebook post that you make. You got to be really stupid. And you got to be really stupid if you believe that the PPP is working Obia to win the next elections, as some of them been saying. And you have to be really stupid to believe that Nigel Hughes is independent when he's on Exxon payroll. And you have to be really stupid if you believe that Norton did not request the treasurer of the PNC to give him 20 blank checks. And you got to be really stupid if you believe that the PNC won the last elections. They did not attempt to rig the elections. So I'm saying it again, you got to be really stupid. So I have no apology to make for those people. I never liked the latest, this Norman Brown, who is seeking relevance. He works, Norman Brown is a security guard at a Sainsbury's. Sainsbury's is a supermarket in London. He posted that President Ali needs a special detergent to wash his hand after he shakes Afro-Guyanese hands. That somebody told him that. Racist, of course. That's all they peddle, the racism, because it's getting close to the elections, it's racism. You have to be extraordinarily stupid to believe that. A person, President Ali, has been trying to engage everybody. His friends are Afro-Guyanese. He's been working in every community. You have to be stupid to believe that, and you have a bunch of crazy people like that. Or that Norton has more skills than 3 pathologists, internationally trained in pathology. Well, I don't have any apology to make that. But But the one man who posted this first, imagine the stupidity of publishing your tax receipts on a vehicle that, several vehicles that you smuggle into the country. And by the way, I saw a statement from the GRA on that matter, because last week I was asked about it and I did not have all the details at my press conference when the judge ruled on this matter. Did not admit the evidence that came from the State Department about the vehicle, that the invoice they sent showed the invoice was for $695,000. So if I were to go by the GRA statement that the judge did not admit it and then gave up to September to give the reason why he didn't admit it, it sounds like the same situation in 2020, that we had to wait 5 months for the swearing in of the president. It boggles my mind. If you don't admit something as evidence, at least tell the lawyers and the court why you don't admit it. So GRA said they're waiting. They may have to wait for 5 months based on what they said in their press release. So they'd have to wait from June, July, August, 3 months to get a reason why an invoice that came out of the US State Department through a mutual assistance treaty can't be admitted as evidence of fraud. Anyhow, that's it. So I myself, I can't find a rational explanation for that. I can't find a rational explanation for that. I see a number of comments have been made about the oil spill legislation, the bill, and the parent company guarantee. And I would urge the so-called lawyers and the AFC crooks who are part of the original agreement, and some others from the AFC who are complicit with the weak environmental permits, to just get a proper explanation. I'm tempted to get one of the lawyers from the Natural Resources Department to go and educate them about the bill. And so I think Nandalal made it clear in his response about what the bill has done. This bill and this act now has expanded, defined all of the liabilities that any offending party, first of all, it expands the offending authorities or the offending entities. So in the past, we could have only gone after the oil companies. Now we have expanded this to vessels transporting fuel through our territory. So if you have a spill caused by an oil rig, they're liable now. Or if you have a spill caused by a vessel, then they too would be liable. So that's the first thing. Then it says now, I'm going to read you a section. The liabilities for damages under Section 17 includes damages resulting from the unauthorized discharge of oil from a vessel or facility, including A, damage to real or personal property and economic losses resulting therefrom. So that means if our fishermen, etc., suffer losses or any economic losses from any other parties, the company that's responsible for the spill is liable for that. Loss of taxes, royalties, rents, fees, and profit shares, loss of profits of impairment of earning capacity due to injury, destruction, or loss of real or personal property or natural resources. So that's the second part in a definition of liability. C, loss or damage caused by preventative measures. And D, damage related to impairment of environment. So now the entity responsible for the spill is responsible for all of the cleanup costs and all of these damages, which was not clear before, because sometimes they claim, if you don't have a governing legislation, that they would only be responsible for repair of the environment, not for consequential damages. Now the legislation makes that clear. So we've expanded who is liable. We now define liability to include all of these areas. And they're using clause 21 to say, clause 21 reads, an indemnification of any like agreement shall be invalid for the purpose of transferring the liability of a responsible party under this act. So they're saying this indemnification is invalid. So the indemnification from the parent guarantee in the past is invalid. If you read, it's the whole sentence, it says for the purposes of transferring the liability of a responsible party under the act. It defines this. So if you're the party responsible for the spill, you can't go and sign an agreement or say, I have an agreement with someone else and transfer that liability. You're responsible for it. You can't transfer the liability. Has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with the parent guarantee, that indemnification. And if they only were to go on and read page 19 of the Act, where it says financial responsibility, it speaks about a responsible party, 27(1)(a), a responsible party shall maintain and provide evidence of financial assurance to the satisfaction of the competent national authority. That's one. Two, financial assurance shall be in accordance with the Petroleum Activities Act and the Environmental Protection Act. So the Environmental Protection Act now will require of the party that's licensed to say, you're now responsible for full liabilities under the Act. If your assets can't meet those liabilities, you have to now give me a document which shows that you can cover all the liabilities from the parent company. So that is simple, an anecdotal sort of explanation for those people who are making the noise out there. I don't think they understand what they're reading. The Act provides for all of this. And it's sad to see how seemingly sensible people could be so, I don't want to use the stupid word, but so dishonest. Dishonest. I don't want to use the stupid word, although you got a lot of stupidity here in there. So I would urge, I told Anil to do more education on this matter, Anil and Vic and their technical staff. Now, you know what they can't have. And then the Starbuck News said, oh, 4 years have passed. Now they passed the bill. 4 years have passed. They forgot that their buddies in the AFC APNU just signed an agreement. And we have passed several pieces of legislation. I explained this before. We updated the 1986 Act to a new Comprehensive Petroleum Act. We passed a new PSA. We passed a Local Content Act. Now we pass a document to ensure that all liabilities for any spill would be borne or by the company or be owned by by the company that's causing the spill. We've done so many things in the sector to change the environment. 4 years after, well, we have a 5-year term, and we've done what we promised to do in the 5 years. And they're so much nitpicking now, begrudging. They can't even recognize good things for a country when they see it. They just are so negative about everything else. Now, I've seen some public comments about truckers. And some people are trying to capitalize on these truckers for political purposes because of election. So let me tell you a few things about what has happened for those people who don't want to recognize facts. Earlier this year, the Minister of Finance spoke in Parliament in the budget debate. And I'll quote from the newspaper article. He said, "Mr. Speaker, in the case of stone in 2020, Guyana had 6 operational quarries producing less than 740,000 tons of stone. By 2024, the number of quarries had increased to 16, propelling production to over 3.3 million tons, with an additional 3 quarries expected to commence production this year." So we have moved from 740,000 tons in 2020 to last year 3.3 million tons. And the number of quarries have moved from 6 to 16. So I called Minister Vikram Bharrat today before I came here and said, has any of these quarries been licensed to Chinese companies? And he said the answer is no, that all the licenses, the 10 additional operating quarries were given to Guyanese companies. They then contracted Chinese companies to operate the quarries, but they got the license to operate it. That's the first point. But we're producing 3.3 million tons now versus 740,000 tons in 2020. So what happened? The price of stone had gone to $18,000 per ton because of the increased demand. I just asked someone when I'm coming here, and he said, I bought now for $8,200 per ton because of the increased production, increased competition. So the prices are even lower than in 2020 for a ton of stone now. Now, I'm sure that the profit margin was huge when it was $18,000 for the truckers and also for the quarry operators. But now, because of competition and supply to the market, the profit margins have come down, both for truckers as well as the people who own the quarries, because the production cost wasn't much higher when they were selling for $18,000 per ton because there was a shortage of stone. But when the increased production started, which is what we wanted, the price came down. So who benefits? The truckers may make a less margin now, and the quarry operators. But the people of this country and the public works we're doing, they benefit from this. And it's consistent with what we said we will do. We'll expand production. That is one way of lowering cost, because people are complaining about cost of living. You remember we were concerned about the price of stone on building private buildings. You know, like if you're building your house and you now had to pay 18,000, the price came down. So that's a fallacy. That's a fallacy. The second thing is that in sand production, 2024 saw 67 permit holders across the country producing over 12 million tons. This marks a dramatic increase from 2020, when only 18 operations were active, yielding less than 700,000 tons. So we have moved from 700,000 tons of sand now to 12 million tons of sand. And 49 new permit holders in the country. And I asked him, are any of them foreigners? He said no, the permit holders. So this fallacy about Chinese taking over, but many of them are buying the stone, sand, etc., operating, you know, their trucks, etc. But the Guyanese have the permits. But look at the change in production from 700,000 to 12 million, and then from 740,000 tons of stone to 3.3 million, and that's in 2024. Now, just imagine this was not being done, and it's done because of the PPP civic government program. None of the truckers would have had opportunities. You go back to 2020, how many trucks were bought in 2020? You ask the same people. They wouldn't have had this opportunity. So they're benefiting from increased opportunities. So let's continue. I was on the East Coast, and I asked about, we're spending $52 billion on the East Coast to put in infrastructure for about 19 to 20,000 house lots there. They have over 40 contractors, and I asked, are any of them Chinese? The answer is zero. No Chinese in the housing program on the East Coast. $52 billion with 40-something local contractors working there. We're now building a road for GPL. There are, I think, 16 lots. No Chinese contractors, $5 billion along the East Coast corridor. At Wales, we're spending $10 billion to put in housing, 5,000 house lots there. Basically, maybe 20-something, 30 contractors there. No Chinese contractors. They're all Guyanese people, and they need sand and stone and everything to do this. So where are the Chinese contractors working? On the East Bank, they won the IDB bid to expand and repave the road from the airport to about the stadium, the old road. On the Heroes Highway, they got about 4 or 5 lots, which represents, when you look at it sum-wise, less than 10% of the cost of the Heroes Highway. The other 90% went to Guyanese companies, the Heroes Highway. So on the East Coast Road, they are now building the East Coast Road. But let me tell you something. When I was in Canada, about a year ago, 2 companies came to see me, and they said, we were from Canada, we went back home, we bought trucks, we're Guyanese, and the man is not paying us. So I said, who are you working for? They said, on the East Coast Road. I said, are you working for the Chinese? They said, no. The Chinese subcontracted a local guy, and the local guy, we've supplied the stone and the sand, and he's not paying us. So they were subcontracted to a local guy. The local guy then further subcontracted to the locals and didn't pay them. I had to intervene to try to sort it out by some bullying. That is weird. So where is this? But the Chinese have to move stone and all of that for their projects, the bridges and the bridge they're doing there too, and some of the other access roads. Not that many Chinese projects here. So the Linden to Soosdijk Highway is being paved by a Guyanese consortium with a Trinidadian group. The Guyanese and Trinidadian group. That's the big project from Soosdijk Junction to Linden. It's a fallacy It's a fallacy of fiction. But all of this demand is coming because of the PPP Civic. That's why people can own trucks, get a credit, a line of credit to own a truck now, and to get work in the country too. So you have thousands of Guyanese truckers now, including people who own their own trucks, who are working now in all of these programs. So people should not be misled politically. Of course, that's why we sent Edgehill to meet the people, because they are our people and we have to find a way of assisting them. But I want to urge them not to be misled by these politicians, because if it was happening, you go back into Malays again. All the trucks used to be parked, everything used to be parked up. You ask people who own equipment in the past, you ask MacCorp and the others whether they were selling equipment to people, or any of the other trucking companies, if they were selling any equipment under the 5 years of APNU. No, because they had no program. Almost all the hotels being built now are not built by they might be built by the Chinese, but their own. Aden Hotel is built by the Chinese, but owned by a Guyanese, several others. So a lot of the things that are happening now, our people, they contract because the Chinese may be able to do it faster and in some cases cheaper. And if they didn't contract them, they couldn't get some of these buildings built. I went to meet the fishermen. I promised to go and see them a few days ago at Ogle. And I was telling them, one night I'm driving by the hotel that is being built, the massive hotel being built by the stadium, not the stadium, the convention center. And it was raining, and I saw people working there, and not our people, late into the night, like 10, 11 o'clock in the night. They're busy working. So, and then one of the fishermen said to me, I can't find laborers myself. He said that to me. He can't find laborers. So sometimes we have to, if Chinese they're using the road, they must face the same scrutiny like local people. Because there's a claim that sometimes Chinese vehicles or something like that, the police treat them differentially. There must be no special treatment for anyone. That's a different matter. They should enforce the law even-handedly. That's a different matter. Like I said with the supermarkets and stuff like that, that they have to comply with the law too, because sometimes the locals complain that the Chinese bypass all the regulatory process. They're selling everything under the sun in one of their shops, and they don't have the requisite permit. That should not happen. But then you can magnify things by finding a scapegoat, because the politicians have an interest in stirring up this little instability. All those truck drivers know now that instinctively, without the PPP and what's going on in the economy, they wouldn't have had opportunities. So I just wanted to address that issue and tell them not to be misled. Of course, we'll continue meeting with them, because Minister Edgehill met with them, and we'll try to ensure that our people get work wherever, because in the next term, a massive expansion again for all of these areas. We'll need everything else. There's a good editorial in the Starbuck News, Fighting the Fakes. First of all, I thought it was fake news and stuff like that, which is what we need to do too. But it speaks about the government analyst, Food and Drug Department, and fake medical supplies and drugs coming into our country, which could immeasurably and irreparably harm a lot of our people. And they need to really step up on this. This is a department that needs to really do much more work. They need to do much more work and to enforce the laws. I've had personal experience of this, and not just in these areas, medical supplies, but also on food. We have food near expiration date that comes into this country. People changing the expiration date. I've had personal experience with this, with a lot of the beverages that they come in, they buy them, some suppliers buy them near expiration date, so they get it cheap. They dump it on our people here, and then some of them illegally, criminally change the expiration date. They need to take strong enforcement action. I think I support this editorial strongly, that we need to do much more work in this regard, because you have a lot of, you can't say crooks now, they would say I call all Guyanese crooks, but you have some crooks among the people too, yeah, who will do this. So I'm going to end there. I just don't, yeah, thank you. Yes, go on.
Yeah, VP.
Yes.
They do a lot of awareness campaign in terms of the, saying that the Essequibo belongs to them. Do you think that we are doing enough in terms of promoting people awareness on the Essequibo region?
Yeah, I think they need to reinforce that, because a lot of people don't believe that the Essequibo belongs to them living in Venezuela. So that's why they had such a low turnout at the referendum. So they need to convince people that Essequibo belongs to them. But because we've been controlling this territory for over 100 years now. And so they need to do more of that. You ask a child in this country, or any Guyanese, whether Essequibo belongs to Guyana or Venezuela. The campaign that you have to do, that campaign to say Essequibo belongs to us. Everybody would tell you the same thing, except those who are deranged and need mental help, and there are very, very few among us. You ask a child there. We don't need to convince our people that Essequibo belongs to us. Every child knows that. We're in control of it. We go fly down to the border in Mabaruma and Port Kaituma and all of that. So I hear a lot of this from the opposition. Oh, we're not doing this campaign, and Venezuela is doing that campaign. They need that campaign because their own people don't believe it. Look at the comments at the referendum time. That even from many people in Venezuela, like Machado said, let the matter be settled at the ICJ. That was the major opposition. So they need to lie to their people and spread propaganda. We don't need, you as a school child or anybody in this country, we don't need that awareness campaign. We need, and the patriotism and the solidarity is there. There's no, well, again, I should say, 99.99%. You're not going to get the remainder of Guyanese strongly support, they're patriotic on this matter. They think Maduro is a madman and Venezuela is crazy to pursue this. So sometimes it creates relevance for politicians to talk about this. Oh, we're not doing enough campaign to say Essequibo is ours. Why? I don't understand this. No, I can understand printing a t-shirt and giving it to everybody. That's a different matter. Maybe we should print 400,000 t-shirts. But we can't, every time this guy acts up, we can't be self-flagellating. We have already know what Maduro is and the deflection. Every time he sends a vessel out there, like the last time he sent the vessel and was trying to meet the president, and the president did not meet with him because it was designed to take him out of his relative isolation. So when he meets the president with some leaders, he could claim that he has relevance. He's been isolated because of US sanctions, everything else. So we cannot go by their playbook. At every time they saber rattle, that we need to run around the place like headless chicken. We have kept our country safe over the years. We have a strong international partnership. We have the ICJ ruling. We have a great case before the ICJ that I have no doubt would reaffirm the validity of the 1899 award. So we need to demonstrate that, act maturely, rationally. We can't be as irrational as he is or as panicked as he is. We have to be deliberate in our undertakings. And it's those politicians like who are, some of them, who they just want something to criticize. They have nothing else to criticize. So they begrudgingly give them the support on the border. I've had a different experience. I don't want to recall it because we're at a nice place with national solidarity. But I didn't have all the solidarity from the opposition when we were dealing with Suriname. Even when we went to invoke the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea to get our maritime boundaries demarcated with Suriname. You didn't have unanimous support for that. And that's the boundary that we got settled. It was the only in a formal with an international ruling since the 1899 award. And it happened, and then it allowed the resumption of the exploration activities because Exxon had initiated force majeure proceedings in that period when the case was being heard. But I don't want to go back. It was a bad period to show how I did not have the full support from the opposition at that time on the border issue, where on the other hand, the PP has always given support on border matters. But I didn't want to bring it up because at this moment in time, we all together and we have national solidarity on this matter. So I don't want to bring up past issues, but sometimes it's worth thinking back to these issues. So I have a longer experience on this issue here. And when Marco Rubio came here and said it would be a bad day for Venezuela if they think they would invade Guyana or take any action against the ExxonMobil vessel. It was a clear signal. The US ambassador said, expect a strong tweet from the State Department on his fraudulent election in the Essequibo. But we must not self-flagellate as a country. And we must not be panicked. You can't operate sensibly if you're panicked as a country. That's not how, it's not a characteristic of a stable government. So, sorry, yeah. Go.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo, Anas Williams, Culture News. Sir, in light of the recent passing of the oil spill bill, and also with all of the different frameworks,
which bill?
The oil spill bill.
Oh, oil spill. I dealt with that issue.
The question is not on the oil spill bill. I wasn't finished.
Oh, okay, all right.
With all of the different frameworks being put in place to manage and strengthen the oil sector to ensure maximum benefits for Guyanese, is government considering putting a depletion policy in place?
Okay. Oh, depletion again? Oh, you don't want me to be unkind to you today. I'm like, well, you're going back to the depletion policy? All right. So let me just say all of this distortion and the big hullabaloo about the audits. I asked the ministry yesterday to put out a comprehensive statement on all 3 audits, so you have clear answers now on where we are with each of the 3 audits. And it's clear as daylight. Give it to my friend, dear friend Glenn Lal, see if he could speak on his TikTok about it. Now, on the oil spill bill, I spoke a bit about it. I didn't go in great detail, but I expect that the government agencies will educate the misguided souls in our midst, coming from the other side, as to the content of the bill and the interpretation of various provisions, how it strengthens the arsenal of tools that we have in holding companies responsible for any spill that may occur in Guyana. And the depletion policy, I have made it clear again that we need, at one stage it came, oil prices temporarily fall, should we have a depletion policy now? And says, you don't determine policies of a long-term nature on the basis of daily occurrences in an oil and gas market, which is known for its volatility. And so when I saw that comment coming from Jordan, I wonder if he really understood policy making. So next week it goes up again. The oil prices go to $80, $90, we change our depletion policy again. One day it drops to $60, we have to have a new depletion policy. The depletion policy that we have now was carefully calibrated to take account of what's happening globally and with the demand for and the supply of crude to the global market. Now, the overarching agreement to go to more sustainable sources of energy will cause a major reduction in demand for fossil-related supplies, fossil fuel-related supplies. In the short term, this may not be so, but in the longer term, this will happen. We've already seen evidence of this taking place in the transport sector. The three biggest sources of emissions now are burning fossil fuel for power generation, 2, using fossil fuel for transportation, and 3, the land degradation and deforestation. They account for nearly over 90% of all emissions, these three sources. So if you look at transportation alone, the plan there is to move to more renewable, more sustainable transport measures. China has now developed a battery that you can charge in 15 minutes and get nearly 600 kilometers from it. The price of electric vehicles are coming down. The cost of battery and their effectiveness, cost of batteries are coming down and their effectiveness are growing. A lot of people are switching now to electric vehicles. Here in Guyana, there are no taxes on electric vehicles, so a lot of people are going to be buying electric vehicles. So all the high taxes people talk about, but there's zero tax on an electric vehicle, so they can be very competitive. So more and more the world is going to go that route because they're becoming more effective. And with a single charge, you can travel 600 kilometers, or not here, that's experimentally. Now it might be about 300 for the batteries that are already supplied locally. So that's going to happen. That would reduce a significant demand for fossil fuel. The second big source of emissions is land degradation and deforestation. But last week I spoke about the conference that was held in Guyana where they want to end deforestation, halt deforestation, and reverse it by 2030. If they succeed there again, then that is another big source of reduction of emissions. And then solar power is becoming more available to people, more cheaper, not with 24 hours, but grid tie-in system, grid tied-in system. So you have your depletion policy has to take account of that environment. I don't see anybody talking about that as the driving factor behind a depletion policy. Because if you don't get your crude out of the ground and transfer it or monetize it, or your gas out and monetize it, and invest or save your financial resources to be utilized for the prosperity of the country quickly, you run the risk of being stranded, your crude being stranded in the ground, because there's several other countries that are competing with you, and never being able to monetize it. If that future happens faster than we think, that is a future where it's a decarbonized future. So that is what one of the primary concerns driving our policy, of the depletion policy, when we said we're trying to get as much of it out of the ground as quickly as possible and transferring this into financial resources. It can't be Glenlal whim and fancies, or based on Exxon throwing hot water and causing global warming, throwing hot water in the ocean and causing global. It's like, really. So what are you? Anyhow, let me don't be unkind today. So that is why we have a depletion policy.
Dr. Jagdeo, Cordell Jones from Livewire News. Recently on the PNCR's Facebook page, they posted that the next APNU government will have a all-ministries approach to uplifting the well-being of Indigenous people. How do you contrast this to the record of the former APNUFC administration? And also, they are claiming that they'll give 2,000 village councillors a minimum of 200,000 payments with no plan on where this money will come from. Share your thoughts on that.
But the thing is that I look at it, I don't pay no particular attention to what they promise, because I know people gonna waste time. So let me see if I have it. I had it in my paper, I didn't even bring it here. So someone could bring it for me. Tell one of the guys to bring this stuff. Almost every measure that they promise, nothing is about development. So they talk about, we'd increase land titling, but we have to pay account. We have to look at competing demands, and we're one Guyana. So that means you're not going to get more land at all. Even in their policy pronouncement, they already made it conditional. Everything is so vague in their promises. So they're not talking about education or healthcare or housing, etc. They're just making wild promises. 200,000 to each to show. Forget what happens in the village. We'll give a two shows some money, and that's the end of the matter. Now the two shows are getting more benefits now, but what are you going to do for the people who live, the 60,000 adults who live in these communities? When you have 240 something two shows that they promise 200,000 each, so it's not a lot of money. It's 240 something thousand, maybe 252 shows, senior councils and head of CDCs. You give 200,000 each. That is like what APNU used to spend, in an afternoon when they went to New Driving or something like that, and or one of the other places, ministerial signing limits. So it's not a lot of money they're promising, but you notice they didn't promise anything for the village development. That is what APNU does. APNU is a party bereft of any planning capability. They just come up with these wild assertions all the time, unthinking. They go and copy it. That's why the Green State strategy that they developed, they brought in consultants from GGGI and UNEP. And it's all about, you know, the best practices from around the world. They love to call this best practices. So cut and paste stuff. It's not about real, organically developed, sustainable policies and programs. That's how you manage a country. You have to manage it in an organic way. In an organic way. Not this, man. You brought the wrong thing. Anyhow. All right, don't worry. It's some pictures that they took here. This is not this stuff. Okay, let me don't spend more time on it, because I can spend all afternoon criticizing APNU and its lack of policy making. I don't want to waste my time on the silliness that they put out here. But I'm glad you brought it up so I could get to comment. Nothing organically developed. But who is their chief policy maker? Sherwin Holder, Mahi Paul, and what's the other one? Lowe, yeah. The three people, as I said before, there's nothing wrong working thing, but never policy making experience. I gotta go. Lowe was a research assistant at SARA. Mahi Paul was working as a community development officer, and Sherwin Holder was working for a private businessman who is buy and sell gold. That was the gold, right? So that's the three policy making experience that they brought now. So that's why they put these crazy things out. They've never done. Anybody send them something that looked a bit technical, they just post it on their pages. They brought a serious party down to the dogs, really. This used to be the PNC. It was known in the past for an intellectual tradition, even if you didn't agree with them. Now we're Norton. Norton is so incompetent, if he falls off a chair to the ground, he'd miss the ground. The thing is that's what they're being led by. So I get it. So let me move on.
Dr. Jagdeo, Mikhail Rodriguez for Daybreak News. Given what we've seen with the Ukraine-Russian war, modern warfare have taken on a new approach. Drones that are very cheap and affordable. Will the Guyana government be bolstering the Guyana Defense Force capabilities or abilities to really address Venezuela when the time comes, if that time comes?
It has, and it will do that. That's all.
Secondly, the government, GRA has recently acted on information it got from the US and has brought charges against one tax evader. No name needed. But what is the government doing? Has the government received any information that would afford the opportunity to recover on the 10,000 ounces of gold that Guyana taxpayers has lost revenue on?
So, accountability for all tax evasion, criminal activities, and false declarations is not a single day's activity. Anyone who is engaged in these practices, no matter how special you feel you are, will have to face the consequences. So, one thing we will not do as politicians, we will not be premature in pushing the technical agencies the investigative agencies to prematurely bring cases. I believe they have acted so far very professionally, and they will continue to collaborate with the US government in ensuring that when the cases are brought, that they're substantiated fully by the evidence. Like in this case, where the vehicle was declared for $75,000, the GRA now has information through the banks that nearly $700,000 were remitted to the company. The US Treasury Department has now supplied the information that the tax invoice was $695,000 US, and they're still doing some investigations that could lead to more substantive charges being laid than the ones that you see before the magistrate's court now. So it's just a matter of time. But you notice how we never get answers to these criminal acts, or we get an obfuscation. It's somebody else's fault that the vehicle was smuggled in. It's nothing to do with me. Never mind, I own the vehicle and I've been driving the vehicle, but somebody caused the criminal activity to be conducted, or there is no criminal activity. It's the ostrich head in the sand approach, thinking because they bury their heads in the sand as to the criminal activities that the rest of the country would not see that they're blatant criminal activities. So how long you will live with that fallacy, the fantasy that like the Odessa Primus's fantasy? I don't know. Obviously, they will live with it forever. But there is a limit to when people are going to start questioning. Like last week I said, why don't they do a press conference since you're making all of these posts? Why don't they do a press conference and clear the air for the people of Guyana and all the reporters of Guyana on the vehicle, on the 10,000 kilograms, and on paper shorts issue, on everything else? You could have a really great time explaining, and you get the opportunity, it's a free country, to say to the entire media corps, I'm being wronged on all of these matters. It is a conspiracy against me, and here are the facts. It's not true that I smuggled 10,000 kilograms of gold. Never mind, the records show it. It's not true that I do this. You can brought in the vehicle and paid $695,000. I only paid $75,000, and here are the facts. Why don't they do that? All of these little posts on Facebook or every time or Instagram don't substitute for answering questions. I come here on behalf of the PPP every week. I get all sorts of questions from the Kaichor News, from everybody, friends and foe alike, and we have to give answers to things. We have to face the country and the media. That's a normal thing. If you're in public life, you have to face people and give answers. Not hide behind somebody's skirt or a Facebook post. Then that's when you test the true mettle of the people. And then you can talk about everything under the sun. So that's the approach. Of course, this week I was looking forward anxiously for the press conference. That never happened. And I want to bet you it will never happen. I want to bet you that it will never happen. That this individual will never host a press conference and invite the full media. Never, ever happen. You can prove me wrong. Yes, go ahead.
Jagdeo, I know the president has ensured that there's a thorough investigation into the Adriana Young's murder, and by even sourcing outside help in assisting with the investigation. Can you give us an update of where that is, if there's any update?
So I guess the police would have to speak on this matter. It's best if the update comes from the police. When the politician speaks about this, they say, why aren't the police giving the update? I think the update should come from the police themselves. So I know that the investigations were going on, and there was a big comprehensive, they were meeting lots of people. I saw Dexter Todd lying on the police again and saying that the police misrepresented him, and that about who was questioned and who wasn't questioned and who was available for questioning. All of that, I don't want to get sucked into this plot by the AFC, PNC, and other forces to prolong this issue. They're not interested in the truth. If they were interested in the truth, we would have moved forward together already on this matter, if they were interested in the truth. But when you have Norton, right, knowing more than the pathologist, and some forensic pathologist or something, I don't know this Dexter Todd, where he's a forensic something, he said he is. Yeah, dissect the plate in front of you, the food, right in front of you. That's the extent of his expertise, in my view. So I'm not going to let the police give an update on the matter. The president, we have gone overboard in meeting the requests of the family, especially at the beginning there. We've criticized the police for how it acted, the misleading statements from the government, by the police. We have publicly been critical of them. Secondly, we acceded to the family's request to bring in their own pathologists, which they did. We hired 2 other pathologists to come in to work along with their pathologists. They got their family doctor, their family lawyer, several other people to witness it. It was a forensic autopsy. The results were shared with the family. They were made public. The result was that the child died from drowning. We said, oh, that's the first thing. Next, we have to find out, was there foul play or not? That's what the investigation is now being done, would reveal. The investigation would reveal. That's the approach. We've no other case have we had 3 in the entire history of the country. We had 3 international pathologists come in and do an autopsy. But still, they want to bring some man from Trinidad, right, to do some autopsy again. A controversial guy. They're looking for a different result. Norton said he knows it's another result. I saw them a few days ago. About 30 of them were protesting outside of the office of the president. Justice for Adrian Young. He can't. If he had said, come, let's protest about the PNC, something else, he wouldn't have even had 2 persons maybe. So they're just capitalizing on this child who is lying there lifelessly, and they just wouldn't give her peace. They would not give her peace. It's callous. It's very callous. I just can't think about it. How these people, for their own political purposes, they just lifelessly lying there and not getting to, rest.
Dr. Jagdeo, everybody has been very uneasy about election, which is set to, on average, by year's end. When will the PPP be breaking for the election campaign, like basically starting the race?
When there announcements, so election is a process. So it starts off with the proclamation by the president of election date. And then he has to subsequently dissolve parliament. Then you would have to submit your list and all of that. So lots of those things are more routine things. The campaigning is one thing. There is a technical aspect to it. And so we are overall ready in the PPP. We are ready to hit the campaign trail at any time that the announcement is made. We're ready to hit the campaign trail because it's not about what happened yesterday. It's about accounting for 5 years of your tenure in government. And we believe that any reasonable person, independent, pro-PPP or pro-APNU, when comparing track records, they will see that our party's performance has vastly been superior to that of APNU. And that this policy of polarizing the country will not work. And that's one thing we have to be careful about. It starts with these lunatics like Norman Brown, etc. I don't know. He has these people every day, that's their life now. They live abroad, some of them, and all day they post the most divisive things, and it's their life. Because I think many of them, like people like Norman Brown, they're failures in life. You leave Guyana, you're working in the coal for another people. He used to criticize white people a lot. Now you're working in the UK, right? Down there, you're a security guard at a supermarket. Your life is a failure. They begrudge the progress when they see people owning their own homes here and owning their own vehicles. Everybody now busy getting a job, exciting. And I think they will long to be back home, but they can't come back. But they can come back. Please come back if you wish. Of course, they're Guyanese. But they're ashamed, like people like him. They begrudge people. Every time they see a man own a house, a young professional, they're going to cuss them out. Oh, they're PPP. Any Afro-Guyanese say, I'm supporting the PPP because of progress, they cuss them out too. They hate themselves. They hate themselves. People like Brown. And that's why he would invent some vile thing like Irfan Ali washing his hand with a special detergent after shaking Afro-Guyanese hands. How could you, only a sick, warped mind would even spread a rumor like that? You have to be really sick, in need of mental help. I guess when at 2 in the morning, when the cold is biting him and he's doing his guard duty outside the supermarket, that's what he comes up with. This is the sort of people that we're dealing with. And they're going to get worse as we get closer to the elections on the racism. They're trying to divide our people again. It worked well for APNU in the past. They tried with the Adriana Young matter, didn't give them all the benefits that they're hoping to get out of it. They're still trying. Now it's this on about Irfan Ali. Then, we were also doing rituals to win the elections, sacrificing people. It's so ridiculous. And as I said before, you have stupid people who believe that. Those are things. So that's it. Thank you very much.